up and running with the Watercolor Studio 42, and today I'm kind of getting into the mood for spring and summer, I guess. So I'm going to be doing a floral. Now this is one that I worked on a while ago, and this is about the size that I'm doing now. It's probably the overall size is probably 8 by 10 inches. And the thing is that, of course, you can cut the mat any size you want. Sometimes people cut the mat a little bit wider. You can make it thinner and so forth, depending on the individual. And then this fits into a frame. This is what I've been doing lately. In the past, I used to mat and frame the work with the glass, and now I've been just doing it this way. I'll do the artwork and then put a mat around it, and then I put it in one of these clear wraps and sell it this way. And but I always try to pick the outside as a standard size, like 8 by 10 or whatever, so that it's easy to find a frame for the artwork. Some people hang it up with, you don't a lot of time need a frame. So you just hang it up this way, just put a little clip type of thing on the back and just hang it on the wall. I would suggest probably obviously taking it out of the clear plastic, but if you wanted to protect it, you can leave the artwork with the plastic little bag, you know, to protect the artwork. But most watercolor has to be under glass, and if it's not real glass, it's you know, some of that imitation plastic glass. So anyways, now that's that. I can use that as a reference, but usually I'm going to start out scratch today. What I like to do sometimes when I do the arrangement of flowers and things, I try to keep it a little bit loose and free and have some sort of direction. Sometimes I use letter C or the letter S, kind of like a wavy line. It comes down around and goes through like this. I'm doing it very light, but you can see the curvature of that. It's just like a letter S shape. As a C is just a loop around. But what you don't want to do, you don't want to make the flowers look too rigid as if they were metal flowers or something like that. So you try to do the arrangement so it's kind of nice and free and loose. So that's how I kind of start off light with the pencil, just making that, you know, shape so the flowers flow. And then when you put the flowers down, you can sort of see a Z or an S shape. The movement in here, in the drawing and the painting, see, it's like an S shape in there. But that gives it that movement and flow. What you don't want to do is stack one above the other, like cans on the shelf, you know, type of thing. You want to have it kind of move and flow. And that's true about anything that you would probably draw. Even with a regular landscape or seascape, you still want to create that movement, you know, especially with the water or the clouds or whatever it might be. You know, I'm doing this. I'm like almost like an orchestra conductor, but that's the way it flows, you know, okay? So S shape. Now, I might I indicate where I want the flowers to go. I put a little soft X here, there, and usually it's like 1, 2, 3, uneven numbers, or you know, like 5 of something or whatever. So 1, 2, 3 there, and then you could put something else in between, another type of flower, one there, another one there. I always deal with the uneven numbers for some reason. Well, of course, the reasoning behind that is that you don't want to put two of something. It looks like TV rabbit ears. You know, you don't want to do something like that. So by adding that third something, see, you have that flexibility of being able to manipulate it up, down, or whatever. But with two of something, it's very difficult. And I usually try to offset it a little bit, not putting something dead center, but a little bit to the right of center or left of center, and then up a little higher, one below the other, sort of the arrangement. So it's flexible. It has a little bit of movement. And of course, line is vertical up and down. That makes everything look rigid. And going across, everything's horizontal. It's kind of back and forth this way. So diagonal is a nice line to use, especially for the stems on flowers. Just have a curve a little bit there and bend either to the left or right and so forth. So it's an idea of getting the flow going of the composition. Now, let's see. I've indicated a little bit by putting the X's in, and what I do when I start painting, I usually start from the back and work to the front. In other words, I'll do like painting whatever I want soft for the background, and then the next thing after that, believe it or not, I do the leaves, the green leaves, and they could be multicolored, you know, of the leaf. Dark or light or whatever, different shades of the green, if you will. And then the finale is doing the flowers themselves. So I'm building, and I should mention also, sometimes I'll show part of a vase, not the full vase. Sometimes I'll show a full vase, but usually the vase should be only 1/3 and 2/3 should be the flower. But don't do it the other way around. It kind of looks strange. If you have too large a vase and next to nothing flowers, it doesn't work as well, in my opinion. Okay, so here we go. Let's see. I got some paints out here, and what I want to do is just add one more color, maybe add a blue, and that's about it. So I've got my 3 primary colors, but I've got a yellow and a red and a blue, and then I have a little bit of green there too also. Okay, here we go. So, start off usually with a large brush because I'm going to be doing a lot of the background first, and you might want to just get this out of your way too so you can see what I'm doing. You might want to wet the paper just to kind of loosen up the fiber of the paper. And you could wet the whole paper in this case. You don't have to do any particular place. Just paint around with the water. And that just loosens the fibers up in the paper, so when I put the paint into it, the paint automatically kind of settles into the paper. Now this one that I did, it looks like I used a little bit of yellow there. I started off with a little hint of yellow in the background. And then I introduced some blue into that also. See how if you wet the paper first, you don't have any streaks in there, no brush strokes. It just settles into the paper. And it can be various shades. You can make a darker shade of yellow, or you can kind of dilute it down more and make it like just a light shade background. Okay, something like this. Okay. Now, sometimes what I do is corner to corner. I might put one corner lighter and then one corner a little bit darker. Usually down around the bottom, you might want to perk it up a little darker, corner to corner. We'll put a little bit more paint on that brush. All right, you can see how that's much darker over here. All right. Okay, now we'll take a little bit of blue, put that out in here, mix that around, and we're going to just introduce maybe some a little bit of green in the background, and you might want to make that a little bit bluer. Let's see what I can get here. All right, here we go. Make this corner a little bit darker over here. Go right to the tape. And you get that heavy spot out of there. You don't want that to dry in. I don't want that to be too dark over here, so I'm going to take some of that color and pull it around over in here. Okay, that's that. Okay, that looks pretty good for background. It's going to be every time I do something, it's not always the same, even though it might be the same subject, but I always go about it differently, you know. Maybe the background might be a little different shade. What I left yellow or lighter in this corner might not be always the same down here. Now you could take your brush too, squeeze it out, and you could use the brush to lift up some of this paint. If you don't want this color to be that dark, just take some of the paint out, and over here you can use one of these paper towels and take some of that paint out of your brush. Just lift it if you don't want it to be too dark. Now what happens with watercolor when it dries out, it always dries lighter anyway. I got a little bit more blue into that up in there. All right. Carry a little bit of that around here. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to repeat some of that kind of hint of blue. That can go down around the bottom. Now what I'm doing here is actually putting color, or mixing the color on the paper. This is exactly what I'm doing, is putting this color, mixing the color right on the paper. Okay, got some blue up there, blue here. Maybe another pinch of blue in there. I'm always doing 3 of something, you know, at least 3 of something. Or it's always that odd number that I've always used. That's quite blue there, isn't it? All right. A lot of times you'll see that when they do photography is the same thing too, how they work the lighting on the background scenery and all that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, what I want to do here is take some of those brush marks out. Okay, that's a nice distribution of the yellow, blue, and of course, if the paper's wet, you're mixing yellow, blue, and getting a little hint of green. Okay, so now that's okay for the background. Let that set up a little bit. Now, the next thing I work on is I do the leaf, where I want the leaves to go. I've already indicated where the flowers probably will be located, and sometimes I have to remind myself. I put these little X's down, but sometimes my paint will hide the X's, but I got a general idea of the S shape, how it's going to flow around here. Now, the next thing we want to go to is maybe doing some of the leaves. Now, you can stick with a larger brush if you want, but if you want to be a little bit more cautious about things, you might want to use a smaller brush. And you're doing leaves that have more of a point to them, so you might want to go to a round brush that has more of a point to it. Now, when we're doing that, of course, we want to get your green a little darker. Now, when you're mixing colors, the general rule is start with a light color first and then add the darker into it. Like if I want to get a darker green, I could use a little bit of yellow first. I can either put it in an empty well over here and then take some of my blue, and this is the darker shade to yellow. So now blue, you stir it around and you get sort of a deeper green. You get a deeper green color. Now, again, you have to consider the distribution, and it's again sort of thinking uneven numbers. You might put, like in this picture, I had a little bit of green here. I put a little bit of green in this area, up in here. Now that's 3 places. Now over here, okay, something off here. And I'm kind of going up, following that S shape, up into here maybe, something like that. So I've got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 different areas of darker shade of green. Now, if this is dry enough, that we can get that leaf to hold its shape. So if I do it's kind of a general leaf, I want to bring it down, give it a little bit of a point to it. So you can just kind of pull that out and lift up. See how it goes to a point? Okay, even that takes a little practice sometimes to work that. Just pull it out. There. If it looks like something like a leaf, leave it. Okay. All right, leave it if it looks like a leaf. There we go. See how you can put a little point on that? You can just fill it in too a little bit into the center. Now some of this area can be a little bit darker. I'm adding some more green. Now we got 1, 2, 3, 6 areas. Not that everybody's going to be counting all these shapes, but if just to be on the safe side, I want to stick with what I was talking about, put another little green in there. Now pull this out wherever you think you can get it to go to a point and lift up. Like that, lift up, bring your brush up, like lifting it up, and you can pull it out to a point. Okay, we're going to bounce around in here. So, now, is that looking okay? Now, of course, you can always enlarge upon the green area. I've indicated somewhat where that would go. But now, what we want to consider where we're going to put some of the flowers. Now, you can still use the same round brush if you want. What is it, about a number 14, I guess. And you can indicate where you want the flowers to go. Well, we certainly want to get some pink or red in there. So let's indicate, here's a good location for maybe some pink there. You want to follow the S shape. So I'm going to put something right in there. We'll go to here. Yeah, right into there possibly. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4 up in there. So I want to put something with following the S shape. Maybe something a little bit, okay. Yeah, maybe off in here somewhere. So now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, an uneven number. Why don't we just settle into that for now? And if we want to fill it in with another suggestion of part of a flower or a bud or some more leaves, we can do that a little bit later. So now we've got this started as distribution. Now, because this flower is down here, that's probably going to be a little bit large. It's going to be about this size in here. This one's got to go this way. Let's see, we'll put this one, fill up that space up in here. And put a little bit more paint on that. Okay, we've got something going in here. Okay, something off here. I'm just tapping around. Basically, kind of a irregular circle, oval, whatever. This has got to be bigger here. So we're going to fill that in quite a bit more. You could distort the contour of it too. Let's see. I'm just tapping to get the texture. Now let's go a little bit over here. Okay, and these are going to have darker little areas where you want the light not to go as much. A little bit up in here. This could almost be like a couple little buds up in here, something smaller. I kind of jump around when I'm doing this a little bit with the brush. With the brush, kind of bounce around here. And I don't finish any one particular area. I just kind of keep bouncing around. If it looks okay, I leave it. I say this all the time, but this is that's what I'm thinking about too, you know? If it looks all right, leave it. Don't go tampering too much. Now things might change. I'm not saying things might not change a little bit while you're working. You can always do something else with it. Let's see, let's do a little bit up in here, this one. I'm just working with this red. Now this red that I'm working with is called quinacridone rose, but actually quinacridone rose is actually alizarin crimson. But sometimes they like to call it by a more scientific name, I don't know, botanical name. A lot of plants have botanical titles, but they're hard to pronounce, so we come up with a less of a tongue twister, what we call things. See how I jump around, keep it kind of loose if you can. If some areas get a little bit fuzzy, sometimes you can tighten it up a little bit later on when you put some more green around it. Okay, jump around here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still an uneven number. We'll have this a little darker there. Okay. Now, I don't know if it does mean something, I suppose, how much paint to water you have on your brush. Of course, the more water you mix into the paint, the lighter the paint gets with watercolor. You don't do anything else. You don't put another shade or something into it if you don't want to. You just kind of let it do its thing. Okay. This one really looks kind of bumpy. We'll tighten it up a little bit. Go around it a little bit more. Now, a lot of times when you're doing a floral painting, you may not have an exact particular type of flower in mind. So you just make something that's kind of generally, like, you can't go too far wrong if you make it look like a carnation or a rose or one that's a little easier to do, maybe like a daisy with the petals, you know. A lot of flowers just with the petals. Okay. See, I'm just jumping around. Give it a time to kind of set up a little bit. And go out there. The contour doesn't have to be perfect, you know. You don't have to stay inside the edges that much. Okay. You try to make them look like they're basically the same species of flower. Okay. Oh, we've done a little bit of that. Now, with this particular picture, I have some areas that are whiter, and if I've gone into this background color too much, what I have to do is take just some white. Now, they do have what they call Chinese watercolor white. That usually comes with the kit and the sets of colors you may buy, but I use acrylic white. And that's more of an opaque, solid color, white, and it hides a lot more without too much work. Now, I can use this same brush that I have, but what I want to do is make sure I get most of that paint that I was using out of the brush, if that's possible. When you squeeze the brush and it doesn't show too much color, then you're all set to use another color. That's for sure. Now, with this one, we could do something similar. And let's see, we could put one flower here, and another one I can put over, maybe off here somewhere. Let's see. Follow that S shape. Safe enough there. Maybe something off here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, put something off here. Over here. 1, 2, 3, maybe something up there. 4. 1, 2, that's an even number. We're not going to really be counting. I'm counting, but you don't have to. Or people looking at the picture, they probably aren't apt to. But I'm trying to just follow that little soft S shape around here. Okay. Let's see. I don't know if I want to add a little bit more noticeable white up in the area. Make it show up a little bit more. See how the paint will cover some of that background, but you still have to put something around it to make the flower show up better. Okay. Now, if in this particular picture, I didn't emphasize or show any leaf direction. If you want, you can put maybe some part of a leaf coming out of here, and connecting a few things together. Right now we got a lot of loose ends that we got to deal with. Take some yellow. I'm mixing my blues and the yellow to get some of the different shades of green. Stem out there. Have a few things connect here and there. Okay. Again, with the stems, they can be different shades too. Sometimes you'll see a stem that really isn't green, it's kind of turned a little bit. And I'm making this kind of go off to a point. You have a little bit of a flare in there. You see how you can go lighter and just kind of suggest some things. Now, what we got to do now is kind of fill in some of this solid area, and we're going to kind of dance around some of these. We want the white flowers to show up definitely. Whoa, let's go. Where are we here? Okay, that looks better. Yeah, you want those whiter ones to show up. So you might want to just put a little bit more contrast around them, kind of fill it in more. And I'm just wiggling the brush around, see what things are happening here, what it's going to look like. Now, what you want to try to avoid is to not go too much into texture, because you can go crazy with all the texture. Too much. See, then it gets too busy. So you have to kind of pick and choose where you want the texture to how much you want to fill in of that. You can keep it loose, you know. Let some of the white show through. Let some of the background come through. But you do want to tighten it up a little bit more. Pull it together. I'm going to go a little darker here. Put a little extra blue in it. I don't a lot of times like to use too much green. I'll always use some other color with it. You know, with probably more of a bluish tone to it. Not that I don't like green, it's just that sometimes it can get a little bit too boring. You just add a little extra color to it. Fill in some of this around the flower. The darker you can get around those flowers, the better off you are for contrast. Some areas you want to show up a little bit more. Always underneath the flowers. It's always in the shadow. And again, you can add some more sort of suggestions of leaves. Again, pull that brush out, pull it up so that you're filling this all in here. Get some of those solid areas. And let's see, let's put a little bit more around it through here. Now, sometimes you can blot too and bring out some of the highlight on the plant. I always keep a piece of tissue in my hand in case I want to blot something out. Let's go up into here, pull this together a little bit more. See, if this doesn't show up enough, you can cut into that and kind of pull that back out into the light So when you put it back out in the light, you just have it fade into the background. Put some water in there and just have it just blend back into the background. Usually when you paint, a lot of times, you're actually using the brush almost like as if it was holding onto a feather. You think of how you dance around with a feather. It's the same idea, I guess. I have a feather in my hand. And again, you can kind of move some of that paint around on the surface. Now, this is two different colors, but I probably might have to go a little darker because I'm kind of losing it in through here a bit. Might have to put the shadow darker, deeper color. Just around here. Make the white show up a little bit more too. Okay. Can we have something else coming out of here? Probably. Let's mix up some more green here. You could have something coming down through here, maybe sticking out through there. You don't want to do too much of that, but you can do a little bit more. Give it a little bit more of a base to it. Yeah. You don't want to make it look like too many little legs sticking out either. So some of this you have to kind of maybe fill it in a little bit more. Put some solid color in there. Again, you could take some of the edge off or tighten it up one way or the other. You can tighten it up a little bit more. Okay. I want to get back into here. Just want to see if I can make this a little darker up in there. So the contrast, get a little bit more contrast. I get a little bit more blue into that green. Get it a little bit darker. And then, if you don't want too many hard edges, you just take your brush and just pull some of that paint out, soften it out. Now, if you do something like that, if you want to repeat that, maybe somewhere else, that particular color. Now, everything, it will dry out. Connect, a little bit more connect. Pull this together. Okay. Oh, yeah, I want to blend that in a little bit more. And you can have something that really kind of sticks out, not so hard as that, but let's break that in, soften that down, yeah. Dance around a little bit more with the brush. Some shadow back there, a little shadow more over here. Make the stem show up a little bit more. Okay. Now, let's see how we're doing here. Don't want to see too much of that. I just erase it with the water. Come back up into here. Okay. Now, these flowers, if they don't show up enough, we have to put a little bit more color. So there's a little darker shadow around them. It looks like too repetitious down here. Too much the same. We could fill this in a little bit more. Have this go out a little further. This side can kind of come down and go out that way. You can always add more to it. You come back tomorrow and you can see what's happened in there, and you know exactly how you can touch it up. What do you need to add? I think in just about everything that you always paint, you always want to try to do less. Don't overwork it. You can keep working this until you really kind of take away from its kind of nice, graceful flow. It gets a little bit too much. I can go a little bit up into this corner. See what I can do up in there. Something else. Break that up in there. The background. Now, if you don't want that in there, you just erase it while it's still wet. Take some of that out. So now you can put back some of the lightness. Now, my paper towel here is a little bit messy, so I can start with a cleaner one. And let's say, for example, I want to lighten this up in here a little bit more. So you just drop some water on it. Just water on your brush. Just drop it on there like this. And I'm going to press pretty hard and take some of that color out. I didn't get too much of it. But you can lift some of the color out. But you have to wet it again, because if it's dry, you're not going to get too much highlight out of it. Now, here's another thing. Like some of these have a little bit of white showing. Well, if I wanted to put a little bit more white back in, just take white on your brush and just hit it in a few little strategic areas, and you can bring some of that white back. Okay? Yeah, you can bring that back in there if you want to do that. Sometimes the flower has a particular center to it, so you can do that. Put some little specks back into it. Sometimes if it looks too obvious, you can sort of soften some of those specks out too. If you don't like the shape of the speck or too many specks on it, you can just lift them out, take some of that out. But see, now I've made these look similar by putting some specks back in there. Okay, maybe a couple of little drops up in here. Okay. Now, what doesn't show up as well is some of the white. So what I might have to do with that is just put a little bit of a hint of texture into the white. Ooh, not so much. Yeah, that's it. A little bit much there. Okay, just a little hint of something else into the white. I don't know if that helps or not. Soften it out. Might need a little bit more up in there, here. I don't know, out there, I don't know. Might need something. Okay. Now this one needs a little bit more speck, a little speck or two in there. It might be a little bit too much. Soften it out. Or maybe add a third something, or even a fourth or a fifth. You know, I don't know. Don't get carried away too much here. Okay, so now I have to make a decision how much more I want to do. And it might be that I should let it set overnight, look at it with a fresh eye in the morning type of thing. It doesn't look too bad right at the moment. What we've done, it's not that bad. So I don't want to overdo it too much. Maybe have a few little strands going out in here, like a piece of fern or something. If it gets a little bit hard, you know, we'll do some little chemistry or touch up here. Whatever. Now I mentioned something about doing something else in the air. We've still maintained the S shape somewhat. At least we broke it up somewhat. It's not one exactly above the other. Now, sometimes you might have to, later on after it dries, you might see where two flowers may have fused together, so you separate them with a little darker shadow underneath one or the other, and that helps that. But it almost seemed like everything kind of after a while pulls together, and you can close it in easy enough. You know, you can. But what you don't want to do is make it look too. See, 1, 2, 3. What I usually do is just try to do something that changes one of them a little bit more. You can change more the shape of something or fill it in more, so it's not quite as noticeable. You can put a little bit of shading for the background, or make some of the edges softer. But there's certain things you might want to touch up here or there. Maybe put a little bit more, take some of the edge off of that, quiet it down a bit, and whatnot. Now, eventually, when this dries out, I'll know exactly what needs to be done. I think maybe this could be broken up a little bit more through here, where it looks like it's too much going on. Certain areas get too busy, and you have to kind of take some of all that stuff out, you know, take it out. And there might be certain flowers that need to be kind of pulled together a little bit more. So you can kind of make certain adjustments to that. Just touch it up here or there. But that gives you an idea how that works. You still maintain some sort of a flow there. But the worst thing that could happen is to get too uptight. Now, it seems to me, as you do, let's say if you work on this particular picture and then do another one, do 2 or 3 a day, then I think by the time you get to the third one, you kind of get the flow a little bit more working for you. And it seems like sometimes when you start off doing something at first, all of a sudden you get a little bit too uptight with it, but then the second one you loosen up a little bit more, until you get the effect that you're looking for or a little closer. I did this one. You can see I was influenced quite a bit by the other painting. Now, if I put this aside and then do this over again without referring back to that, then this would change a lot. Even the color itself, you can change a lot. You know, you don't have to go with the pinks and the reds and the white. You can change. I like the blue, because I like blue anyways. I wear a lot of blue. But the thing is that you want to make like morning glories, the way they climb over a railing and so forth. You can have like a railing for a background, and then have the flowers kind of, you know, how they grow up around and wrap around and so forth. The whatever objects that they can get to climb. So there's a lot of different things you can do. It's a little empty over here. You're always thinking of balancing this, but you can see the S shape in there. See how I originally started, and you can emphasize that a little bit more as you go along. So that's that. Now, as far as flowers go, what I've done a lot of times, I've been to some of the shops that sell these artificial flowers. I'm trying to think of one up there in North Attleboro. But there's a lot of places where you can go in and buy these artificial flowers, and they're good to work from. But don't make them look too stiff when you paint. Kind of make your picture a little bit more relaxed and whatnot. Now, another thing you can do, you can take a marker or even a rigger, and if you wanted to put some a little fine line, take your rigger, this thin brush, and you can have some extra little things, you know, kind of come out of there. You don't want to do too much of that, but just a little bit of that. That's okay. And, you know, just to break up some of the areas, that might loosen it up a little bit more. It kind of extends it to the edges. You can work something like that into it. Okay, so I'm going to kind of be closing down here a little bit, and I'm just going to remove the masking tape so that you can see what it looks like if it had a white mat around it. If I can get these tapes up. There you go. I always have fun with the tape. Okay, here you go. There you go. Okay. Make sure you don't have too much paint on your hands when you take the tape off, because you'll leave your fingerprints on your artwork here. So it's nice to get back into florals. Think spring, think warmer weather. And I gotta add one more little thing. I'm gonna put my sign my name here. There you go. Okay, here you go. So it will look a little bit different in the morning, but but this is the one I referred to a little bit to that one. They're not going to be exactly the spacing of the flowers. They're going to be a little bit different. I don't try to copy anything exactly what it is, but hopefully I don't make it to a point where it doesn't look as good. But that will give you an idea how that works. And again, it's the background, building from the back, the little wash for the background, and then the leaves, and then the flowers. See, that's how I've always worked it: the background, leaves, and then the flowers. And then don't get carried away with too much. Don't get it, get too heavy with it. Just keep it a little bit more flowing. Okay? Relaxed. All right. So now, I guess I've got to say, brushes up and see you next time.